This Wednesday, the World Health Organization declared the novel coronavirus a pandemic, while Cuba confirmed its first 3 cases. Chile has seen another day of widespread protests against the Sebastián Piñera government as the president celebrates 2 years in the post. Former Vice President Joe Biden won more delegates in the US Democratic primary elections of Tuesday, leaving Bernie Sanders trailing behind. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. Cuba's Ministry of Public Health confirmed the country's first 3 cases of the novel coronavirus this Wednesday. The 3 patients are Italian tourists who were visiting the city of Trinidad in the province of Sancti Spiritus after having arrived to Havana's international airport on Monday. They have now been admitted to Havana's Pedro Curie National Institute of Tropical Medicine. Health authorities are conducting monitoring and control measures, having identified people who came into contact with the patients, who so far remain asymptomatic. The 3 patients are in a non-life-threatening and stable condition. And this Wednesday, the World Health Organization declared the novel coronavirus a pandemic. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus stressed that describing the situation as a pandemic did not represent a change to the organization's assessment of the threat posed by the coronavirus or to what countries should be doing to tackle it. According to the WHO, this is the first pandemic caused by a coronavirus. There are now more than 118,000 cases worldwide, while a total of 4,291 people have lost their lives.
Has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
And the coronavirus has now reached 14 countries of Latin America, where there are 144 confirmed cases and there have been 2 deaths. Brazil is the most affected nation so far, with 34 cases. However, no deaths have been reported there. Meanwhile, both Argentina and Panama have reported 1 death each. In addition, Bolivia confirmed the country's first 2 cases of the coronavirus on Tuesday. And health authorities in Honduras confirmed the country's first 2 cases on Wednesday. The majority of cases are people who had recently travelled from European countries. And Jamaica also confirmed its first case of the COVID-19 virus in Kingston. The Minister of Health and Wellness issued a statement confirming the patient is a Jamaican woman who travelled from the United Kingdom and arrived to the island on March 4th. She's been in isolation since seeking treatment on March 9th. The Jamaican case is the first in the English-speaking Caribbean, while infections have also been confirmed in the Dominican Republic, Martinique, San Martin, St. Bart's and now Cuba. The leader of the Spanish region of Catalonia, Quim Torra, announced on Wednesday that limits had been imposed on the holding of large public events to stop the spread of the coronavirus. All events involving more than 1,000 people are to be suspended, and all sports events will be held without an audience, Torra explained during a press conference. The Spanish Health Ministry confirmed 124 COVID-19 cases in Catalonia as of Tuesday afternoon. So far, Spain has reported over 2,100 cases, while its death toll has risen to 49. And the Ivory Coast has reported its first COVID-19 case as a national who had recently visited Italy. According to a statement from the Health Ministry, the patient is a 45-year-old man whose symptoms were detected on Tuesday and who tested positive for COVID-19 on Wednesday. There are now at least 20 cases of COVID-19 in sub-Saharan Africa. According to the WHO, cases have been reported in South Africa, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Senegal and Togo. And after this break, we have more on the Democratic primaries in the United States. Don't go away. Welcome back. Joe Biden won the state of Michigan, as well as Mississippi, Missouri and Idaho in Tuesday's six-state primary. The former vice president is now far ahead of his only contender, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, in terms of the number of delegates needed to win the Democratic Party nomination. According to the latest results, Sanders only won North Dakota, and after almost 90% of the votes were counted in Washington state, the two candidates were neck and neck. After Super Tuesday last week and this Tuesday's primaries, Biden has 864 delegates and Sanders has 710. To secure the nomination, a candidate requires the support of 1,999 pledged delegates by July's Democratic National Convention. If no candidate reaches this amount, the next step is a more complex voting system with superdelegates who can vote in any way they want to decide on the final candidate.
And I want to thank Bernie Sanders and his supporters for their tireless energy and their passion. We share a common goal, and together we'll defeat Donald Trump. We'll defeat him together. We're going to bring this nation together. But winning means uniting America, not sowing more division and anger. It means having a president who not only knows how to fight, but knows how to heal. It means replacing a president who demeans and demonizes people with a president who believes in empathy, compassion, and respect for everyone.
This March 15th will see the first one-on-one Democratic debate between frontrunners Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. Sanders stressed his objective at a press conference in Vermont ahead of the debate.
Donald Trump must be defeated, and I will do everything in my power to make that happen. On Sunday night, in the first one-on-one debate of this campaign, the American people will have the opportunity to see which candidate is best positioned to accomplish that goal.
Guyana's acting Chief Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire ruled on Wednesday that the declaration of the unverified results for Region 4 by the returning officer Clement Mingo was unlawful. She also ruled that the Guyana Elections Commission cannot lawfully declare the results of the 2020 general and regional elections until the returning officer complies with the provisions of Section 84 of the Representation of the People Act. According to the Chief Justice, the declaration made by the returning officer is null, void and has no effect. Region 4 is pivotal to the final election results and has been at the centre of the tensions surrounding the delays in the results. The Chief Justice added that the returning officer or deputy returning officer must commence compliance no later than 11 a.m. local time on Thursday. CARICOM Chair and Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, arrived in Guyana on Wednesday heading a delegation of regional prime ministers on a special two-day mission to the South American nation. Mottley is joined by Prime Ministers Roosevelt Skerrit of Dominica, Ralph Gonzalez of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Keith Mitchell of Grenada. Meanwhile, the CARICOM Secretariat said in a statement that the delegation will meet with the leadership of all parties that stood in the recent elections in an effort to ease tensions in the country and assist in arriving at a solution to the deadlock following the vote. Additionally, the CARICOM leaders will meet with representatives of the Commonwealth, Organisation of American States, European Union and Carter Center election observer missions. Members of the Dominican Medical College took to the streets of Santo Domingo on Wednesday to demand compliance with agreements reached with the Public Health Minister in February, including 13 points on wage and pension reforms. Our correspondent in the Dominican Republic, Daisy Toussaint, brings us more on the following report.
Hello, greetings to all. Yes, this Wednesday doctors took to the streets to march following the call issued by the Dominican Medical College to demand that the 3 points of the agreement signed with the Ministry of Health are respected, especially regarding pensions and salary adjustments. Demonstrators gathered at the Maternidad de la Altagracia Public Hospital and marched to the National Palace, where they were met by a police contingent that prevented them from reaching reaching the presidential palace. The doctors assured that they had permission to undertake the demonstration and they tried to force their way through. The police responded by striking them with batons, leading to clashes between the doctors and troops. The doctors managed to bring down the security barricades and reaching the palace chanting, "We provide your health care and you abuse us." The president of the Dominican Medical College, Waldo Ariel Suero, said that they did not deserve this mistreatment when they are simply demanding their rights in what is supposed to be a democracy. He also said that the protests by the union will continue from next week to demand compliance with the law that establishes that doctors should receive 100% of their last salary as their pension. Suero also noted that given the attitude assumed by the military, the government discredits compliance by the Ministry of Health with the agreements. Waldo Ariel Suero also stressed that the authorities have left them with no other option than to initiate and continue this struggle and take to the streets, and warned that if they are not listened to, the fight will continue and may deepen in public hospital. This is all the information we have for now, but to you in the studio.
Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno announced new economic measures to cut $1.4 billion from the budget on Tuesday. Moreno justified the measures as alleged mechanisms to face the threat of the novel coronavirus and the crash in oil prices. The announcements include a budget cut of $800 million in public services and the elimination of 3 public companies and at least 7 regulatory institutions. These measures were called the privatization and liberalization of Ecuador's economy, as demanded by the International Monetary Fund following the dispute over a 2019 loan. The Ecuadorian president also foresaw an increase in corporate tax, but made no mention of measures to maintain prices of products and services. Sebastián Piñera celebrated his second year as president of Chile this Wednesday in the midst of wide-scale anti-government protests. Our correspondent in Chile, Paola Dragnet, brings us more in the following report.
On 18 October 2019, social unrest broke out on Chilean streets. The slogan was, "It's not 30 pesos, it's 30 years," making reference to the price hike in subway prices. Today, March 11th, marks the 30th anniversary of the return of democracy, a failed democracy as it described by the opposition. It was dictator Augusto Pinochet who passed the presidential sash to Patricia Aylwin 30 years ago. But real democracy has not materialized because Augusto Pinochet's constitution has remained in place throughout these 3 decades, reflecting a model of neoliberal exploitation of all natural resources and public services. The price hike was the last straw that saw Chileans lose their patience. Today, we are also marking 2 years of Sebastián Piñera's government, who enjoys a barely 6% approval rating. He's also facing nationwide demonstrations, particularly along the iconic Alameda Avenue in Santiago. These are the avenues President Salvador Allende was referring to when he said that Chileans shall open the great avenues. This is what they are attempting now, despite the violent repression. The protesters have reached the presidential palace, where they hung these signs reading "Piñera, murderer and criminal," and "There will be no peace for the government without dignity for the people."
We're taking one last break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back. Iran has warned the UN atomic watchdog to be wary of empty claims passed on to it after the agency raised questions about the Islamic Republic's nuclear program. The International Atomic Energy Agency last week accused Iran of denying its inspectors access to 2 sites in January.
So the main point is not simply about providing 1 or 2 complementary accesses. It is mainly about the fact that such requests should be based on a clear reasoning and principles in accordance with the agency's relevant documents, which was not the case for the last 2 requests for complementary accesses. The United States is a country that possessing thousands of nuclear warheads used these warheads against innocent people in Japan, and afterwards threatened the other nations to use these weapons against them. It's ridiculous that this regime talks regarding non-proliferation, and while Iran is in full compliance with its obligations, under the CSN Additional Protocol and the JCPOA, accusing Iran for non-proliferation risk activities.
Russian legislators have approved a package of constitutional amendments proposed by President Vladimir Putin, which include giving sweeping new powers to Parliament and stricter background checks on top officials. During the third and final reading in the State Duma or lower house on Wednesday, lawmakers passed the bill on amendments with 383 votes in favour and 43 abstentions. The bill will now be sent to regional parliaments for their consideration, where it must be supported by at least 2/3. Assuming this is successful, the Federation Council, or Upper House, is set to meet again on Saturday to approve the bill. Putin must then forward the proposed changes to the Constitutional Court, which will have 7 days to decide whether or not they are in accordance with Russia's law. If the court green-lights the bill, it's scheduled to be put to a nationwide vote on April 22nd. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan stated on Wednesday that Turkey will keep its borders open for migrants attempted to reach Europe until the European Union meets Ankara's expectations regarding the review of a 2016 migration deal. Tens of thousands of migrants have been trying to enter Greece, an EU member state, since Erdogan announced on February 28th that they would no longer be stopped from crossing Turkey's borders, as had been previously agreed under the deal with Brussels in return for EU aid for Turkey's hosting of Syrian refugees. The Turkish president is hoping to negotiate an update of Turkey's customs union with the EU, a revival of its stalled EU accession process, as well as further financial aid.
Until all Turkey's expectations, including free movement, the opening of chapters, updating of the customs union and financial assistance, are tangibly met, we will continue the practice on our borders.
Around 10,000 people have been left homeless after a devastating fire swept through one of the biggest slums in Bangladesh's capital of Dhaka, according to local police. The fire started in the densely populated Rupananagar slum in the morning and was brought under control by hundreds of firefighters after 4 hours battling the flames. Fires regularly break out in Bangladesh slums where millions live in squalid conditions. Human rights groups have alleged that in the past, some of the blazes are deliberate acts of vandalism by developers seeking to free up areas to construct multi-storey buildings. Police and firefighters are investigating the cause of the fire. Turning to Africa now, tens of thousands of victims of last year's intense tropical cyclone Idai, which ravaged parts of southern Africa, especially Mozambique, are still living in makeshift shelters and face continued threats of displacement due to climate change. Cyclone Idai, the strongest storm on record to hit southern Africa, struck in March last year, leaving around 700 people dead and displacing 1.5 million others. A joint statement by aid organisations reported that a year after the cyclone left a trail of destruction across parts of Mozambique, Zimbabwe and Malawi, nearly 100,000 people continue to live in makeshift shelters. The ongoing displacement has also created additional risks, exposing vulnerable children who've been separated from their families to exploitation. Desert locusts are descending on farmland in the Maringi district of Kenya, east of Nairobi, sparking alarm. The devastating locust outbreak is the worst in 70 years and exacerbated by changing weather patterns. According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, the situation represents an unprecedented threat to food security and livelihoods and comes at the beginning of the cropping season. Locust swarms can travel nearly 100 miles a day and consume the amount of crops that would otherwise feed 35,000 people. Researchers in the Kenyan capital say a new supercomputer will help by tracking a variety of factors to predict the locust movement. And we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.